Hello and welcome, everyone. First, I would like to welcome the great speakers I have on this panel. I have Marie-Therese, the managing partner at Flat Six Lab. I have Mariam Kemel, the manager of AUC Angels. I have Tarek Al-Adi, founder and chairman for Techno Summit, Alex Angels, and Med Angels. And I have Adli Toma, chairman and CEO of Gemini Africa. So welcome everyone to this great panel. Before it, I would just say that entrepreneurship, with its resilience and its adaptability and agility, has consistently played an undeniable pivotal role in driving social and economic change with innovation worldwide. And the beginnings, even like in the 17th century, from that time, entrepreneurship has played such an important role. And it continues to be a primary cornerstone in the development of human civilizations and enterprises across the years. With the aftermath of COVID 19 and what happened in the economies worldwide, entrepreneurship played a bigger role with their creative ideas in technology and using the latest digital transformation trends to solve the newly introduced challenges no one else was prepared for. So, as Charles Darwin said, it is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the intelligent that survives. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. And this is how we see entrepreneurship. Today, in our panel, we will be shedding the light on the Egyptian entrepreneurial ecosystem, discussing its evolution, exploring the various opportunities available, the investment space, and the role of the different key players. So to get things spiced up, Tariq, you've been in the entrepreneurial ecosystem for a long while, and I would like for you to start by giving us like a brief of the evolution of the Egyptian ecosystem, how it all started, and how you see things transforming in front of your eyes.
May, thank you very much for the intro and thanks for having me on this panel and with all my friends and partners in different parts around Egypt. So basically, I'll talk more about how we got involved with the ecosystem. I come from a marketing and advertising background, and we were organizing events for corporates for maybe more than 20 years. And then we started in 2015 in organizing a technology conference to connect startups with investors. This is when we started to connect with players that were already in the market, like Flat Six Labs, like the AUC Venture Lab, some other also players that were there before. But 5 years ago, 6 years ago, things were totally different, and I think the past couple of years have actually been significantly different than the previous ones. I would say that the startup community has been active in Egypt since maybe 2010, 2012, with different, my co-founder already has been investing in startups since 2009. But when we started in 2015, as I mentioned, we were, just had the main purpose of connecting startups with investors, and then eventually had the other players get involved. So we got the corporates, the universities, the government. And I think from 2 years down the road, we realized that the government was actively playing a role in developing and enabling. The corporates were starting to realize that innovation is important and it needs to come from startups, aside from innovating from inside. And also, we have realized that we lacked the access to capital in Alexandria, since our event also happens in Alex and with a Mediterranean focus. So that's how we started the Alexandria Business Angel Network with 6 investors. Now we have 50 investors and around 25 companies in our portfolio. And eventually, afterwards, we started the Mediterranean Angel Investors. Since we were syndicating deals around Egypt, we realized that there's also an opportunity to syndicate deals and promote cross-border investment around the Mediterranean. So we now have 10 countries on the Med that are actively engaging in events and pitch events and looking into deal flow and looking into investing in startups that are around the Med. So, but back to Egypt, I think with an event that had 900 people who came from Alexandria in 2015, and a couple of months ago we had 21,000 people actively participating. That is, this is a 20x growth in our event only. So let it be, talking about the whole country. I think everything is moving exponentially.
Thanks, Tariq. That's very informative. Marie, you are one of the managing partners of Flat Six Labs, and this is one of the biggest enablers. And talking about enablers and key players, would you please tell us a little bit about the role that these key players played in the development that Tariq has just, kind of shed the light on?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mary, and hi, everyone. Pleasure to be with you today. So Flat Six Labs has been in the market now for 10 years. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. So we've seen the evolution from the very beginning, and it's in different aspects. And naturally, we evolved with the ecosystem as enablers to be able to better serve that growing space and that developing industry, and also the entrepreneurs themselves. I think enablers like Flat Six Labs play a very important role. It was a huge role when we started, and now it's an even bigger role with all the activity that we're seeing now in the Egyptian ecosystem, all the big deals and all the international and regional investors coming and investing in our startups. The role is bigger for enablers, particularly those who support startups at the early stage, because they are more intimidated now with all these big rounds and the valuation. So, but there is really a lot of talent, and our role is to support this talent and push it through and give them access to the network, give them access to the market, help them reach their clients, and more importantly, help them build a solid business that will eventually raise the big funds and get the high valuations. So it's a very, very important role, because if you don't support this base of startups that are still starting off their projects, then the pipeline eventually becomes weaker, and we see less great deals and less success stories in the future. So as a seed investor and seed program, now we stopped using the word accelerator, we use the word seed program, just to reflect the evolution that happened in the program itself. It's now more of a growth program, just by virtue of the fact that the kind of entrepreneurs we work with now have developed significantly, from fresh grads right straight out of university converting their graduation project into a business, to seasoned professionals who have been working in different fields, have great experiences. And in many cases, they identify a particular gap in their industry and create a venture around it. So we're dealing with a very sophisticated lineup of entrepreneurs. Some of them are industry experts. Some have been fundraising as part of their businesses, so they're really good at that. But in many cases, they still need access to the network. This is a very important role that enablers play. Access to the investors, access to corporates, and potentially also government entities that needs to license their business or needs to open doors for them to work. And it's very important. It will never fade. Just to give an example, as Tariq mentioned with the numbers, from our side, we used to receive maybe 140 applications per cycle. Now we receive 1,000 applications per cycle. And we only invest in 8 to 10 every cycle. So you can imagine the number of startups and the number of projects out there that need support. And that's why I keep saying we need more and more enablers. When I meet a new enabler that's come to the market and they meet me and they're like, we're competitors, I'm like, no, we're not. We complement each other. The more players there are, the more funding there is, the better for everyone, really. So this is one of the few industries where competition is actually a great thing. It really complements the ecosystem. So we've come a long way. I really want to take the opportunity to salute the entrepreneurs. It's a tough journey. And our role is to try and make it a little bit easier. Yeah, we will all continue to do that. And it's important across all the stages of the life of the venture.
Good. Thank you, Marie. I'm excited to talk to Adli and Mariam, and I keep thinking who should go next. I'll just pick Adli here for like a very short question. With the evolution that we are seeing in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, are there the same that you've seen like a while ago, or you've seen like you are seeing now new uprising sectors that need special attention and need special kind of support in addition to what is already there?
Okay, thank you, Mary, and hello, everyone. Our pleasure to be among this great panelists. When we at Gemini Africa we decided to join the entrepreneurial ecosystem, we believed in what Maria and Tariq mentioned, which is that collaboration supersedes competition, and this was our motto in being part of this rich ecosystem, and that's why we are so happy when we have a new agreement. We are trying to introduce the corporate life, the business side, especially that we represent one of the big corporate in the Middle East. So we want to inject more business deals and more matchmaking in this direction. Back to your question, yes, I believe that post-COVID we have new opportunities in the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Egypt and of course in the Middle East, Africa. If you want to focus on the Egyptian ecosystem, I see a lot of opportunities in the social entrepreneurship, of course, along with the fintech since we are post-COVID, but I would say in the social entrepreneurship there is a real opportunity. Definitely, the creative industry we see and believe, and we are part of evolution of the creative industry, and we in the past period, of course, we see a lot of women-led programs dedicated for the women entrepreneurial, women-led in the ecosystem. It's very important to ensure that there is diversity and inclusion within the ecosystem. Today we had a panel and webinar with UNESCO and other partners, and they were talking about African aspects in the film industry, and I will come back to this. And they mentioned that Egypt, in terms of the inclusion, it ranks the highest within the African countries in the inclusion of women in the industry, was approximately 25%. Maybe it's not yet our aim, but at least we are in the right track. Similarly, we are talking about the entrepreneurial ecosystem. We believe that women can play a big role in the coming period. Having said that, we are focusing at the creative industry, and we have introduced a new track within the ecosystem. Hopefully, not only in the Egyptian ecosystem, but coming from Egypt, which is Cinematech, whereby we have mingled between the entrepreneurial community and the film industry by using technology. And this was the main link between both worlds. It's really different worlds. The ecosystem has its entrepreneurial ecosystem has its own language and model. The film industry has its rules. So we have tried to make a link by using technology. And we have been collaborating with my colleagues and my friends with Tech News, Flat 6 Lab, and of course with VLab in terms of availing more opportunities for our startups and entrepreneurs that have new ideas, services, products in the creative industry. And we believe that this track has a lot of potential, and we are so proud and humbled to be approached by many international entities and many international festivals. On top of them, Cannes Film Festival, Berlin Film Festival, Venice as well, to collaborate and to introduce the entrepreneurial model within the filmmaking and within the film industry. So we see the opportunity in the Egyptian ecosystem, and we have creative startups, we have very supportive ecosystem, and we have as well our innovative tracks.
Thank you, Ali. Mariam, now with what everyone has been saying, with what Tariq, what Marie has said, and what Adli said, especially with the social entrepreneurship and the filmmaking, like endeavoring into that with entrepreneurship, what is needed actually is one of the main things that is needed is actually investment. And while we were preparing for the panel together, I realized like you have a lot to say regarding the investment landscape, especially when it comes raising for the early stage, which applies actually to all these startups that Adli has been talking about, and Marie also has the seed funding and so on. So can you please give us your insights into this area and how you see the investment landscape within the Egyptian entrepreneurial ecosystem?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Marie. And once again, I kind of echo everybody's sentiments. It's really great to be with you guys on the panel. So definitely, I mean, it's been a very strong year. There's been very strong year-on-year growth in investment in startups over the past 5 years. And I think in particular this past year, just to give a sense of the change in 2017, the total funding size was nearly 20 or $22 million. By 2019, that was a little over 140. Following year, a little less than 200, I think around 180. And then just this last year, it was almost $400 million. I mean, that doubling from last year to this year is really massive. And by the way, the year isn't over, almost, but not yet. And in general, I think those numbers and that change has had a ripple effect in the region, where a lot of eyes are on Egypt now. People are very intrigued with what's happening. The massive potential of the market and the supportive political environment are somehow being validated by investors pouring in that funding. I think we currently rank second or third largest in terms of funding for startups in the MENA region. I think we surpassed Saudi Arabia this year, so we're second. But in any case, we're quite close. We were quite close to them last year as well. And of course, it's unquestionable that Saudi is a very interesting market, witnessing pivotal changes. With regards to Africa, we are the third largest in terms of total funding of startups in 2021. Nigeria with well over more than double of Egypt, and South Africa also being larger. So we stand at number 3 now, with slightly ahead of Kenya. But all of that is once again really another validation as to what's to come and what the potential is, I think, for Egypt in attracting even more funding. We're really on the cusp here. So that's in terms of our vis-a-vis our regional counterparts. But when we take a bit of a closer look into Egypt to see what were sort of the key areas of funding, where key areas of funding was allocated, you'll find the big winners, of course, not surprisingly, fintech, transport and logistics, which we all experience, of course, is an area where a lot of disruption can happen. Also, e-commerce. That wouldn't have been my bet, but it did constitute, a full 20% of the deals closed. And listen, of course, there are kind of starting in all sectors. Healthcare, food and beverage, were also two very big ones. Last year, we did see a bit of a dip in some of the sectors relating to media and entertainment, advertising, and marketing, and enterprise software, which really could very likely mean, it could be an area for more attention going forward. I think while there are a lot more investors, obviously, but I think they're still not as diversified as we probably want to see them. So of course, in terms of type, right, angel networks are expanding, more VCs, of course, are coming in. Many of them, it's their first time to have invested in Egypt last year, but still much of the capital is coming from Egypt and GCC-based investors. The numbers will tell you otherwise, because there were just very few but very large deals with internationals coming in. But I think all in all, that's one area of growth that we can see in terms of us sourcing capital from international investors, and I think absolutely an opportunity for them to capture the growth that Egypt is going through, but also in terms of us to expand our investor base.
Thanks, Mary. It was very informative. Tore, since you have your own investment companies and you've been doing that for a while, how do you see the quality of the startups now and to investments as in comparison to how things started a while ago? And are you working on improving this kind of readiness if it needs to be? We can't hear you.
Yep, sorry, I was on mute. Can you hear me now?
It's okay. Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So, as Mary mentioned, the numbers that have been growing specifically when you're talking about Egypt, and the year has not yet ended, and the numbers are almost doubled. And if you look at the amount of seed funding that has come to the startups in Egypt, around 50% of this amount is coming into seed, and I think this is where the gap lies. To answer your question, a lot of startups have started to be more mature than before. The past 5 years, they're starting to address real pain points. They're starting to look at building, getting on board strong co-founders and stronger teams, and looking at retention, retaining their customers, and expanding in different markets and having bigger visions. So I'm seeing that startups are thinking in a more mature way. And I'm seeing that also startups are looking at exit opportunities from day one, which is key to investors to see that these startups are looking at how are they going to make the returns for their investors. What is really important, and what I think most of us here on the panel are trying to look at, filling the gap of seed funding. And I've seen, I'm seeing a lot of VC funding coming into Egypt and the region, of course, but not enough investment-ready startups that are raising, let's say, Series A, because this needs to be addressed from a seed stage. And I think that syndicating deals that we are trying to do with the other angel networks is helping, but we still need more players to come in and invest at that stage, because this is where a major area and a gap that is important to address in that regard. So, of course, there are other gaps later on, but seed stage is really very important. We've seen a lot of progress, of course, in terms of investment, but we still need more of that.
Thanks, Tarek. Marie, we're talking together about the development plans that enablers are thinking of or are considering for 2022 and 2023, especially in the light of what Tarek had just said with the areas and the gaps that we need to work on with the startups. So, are we like here working on something? Is something cooking here?
Yeah, always. So like I mentioned in the beginning, as an enabler and as an investor, you have to evolve with. You mentioned in the beginning in your intro that you have to adapt, right? So we all have to adapt to the new norms. One of the hot topics that's been circulating around in many events and panels with what's happening in the last year is the high valuations that we're all seeing in the market. But again, what I said on one of the panels is that if you're a fund with a mandate to invest in Egypt, or if you're angels who want to invest in Egypt, you have to find a way to work with those valuations. And one way of doing that is trying to find those earlier stage startups who need the support, they need the funding, and potentially the valuations will not be that expensive. And in that sense, Flat Six Labs has been expanding across the North Africa and the GCC markets, which has been one of the key competitiveness or competitive advantages, having that regional presence. Rather than just a regional network, it's an actual presence. You have an office, you have local partners, you partner with the governments in those countries. So you really have access to that market that you can avail to startups from the other Flat Six Labs offices. And in light of that, now that we've sort of covered North Africa and GCC, the next step is actually further south into Africa. So the next plan for Flat Six Labs is launching an Africa fund that invests in multiple locations across Africa. Obviously, it's a huge market, but it's one that we share a lot of commonalities with, and it's very similar cultures, very similar challenges as well. We're a bit more advanced in some areas. Other countries are far more advanced in other areas. So I think collaboration will be key and will be super beneficial for the startups. And it's a new market for them to start looking at. Egypt really needs to work on its ties with the rest of Africa. It's something that we really need to work on, and it will really support the businesses of our startups and help them scale to those markets that are massive and have similar challenges. So easy to adapt the solutions they come up with. So that's on one front. So looking into new markets where we not only want to invest, but also want to open these markets for our existing portfolio companies to expand to. And again, addressing the fact that the entrepreneurs are now seasoned professionals who, by default, the current state of the startups, they demand more money to grow faster, to hire good talents, and basically to sustain their lifestyles also and the living expenses. We are also working on increasing the ticket size so that we are able to capture those still early stage startups, but by default now they need more money and they need to be able to survive longer and give them a longer runway. So this is something else that is cooking again in the essence of evolving with the ecosystem and what's happening. So it's very exciting. I love the fact that as part of our mission to spread the word, we really saw that in the number of applications across all our programs in all the locations. So more and more people are encouraged to start their own ventures. They know that there are support systems, particularly women, which is one angle that we have focused on a lot, especially in the other governorates around Egypt, away from the two big cities. And we really have seen great success stories, and we wish to see more of them, not only in Egypt, but across all of Africa.
Thanks, Mari. Mariam, back to you, because one of the things that I was thinking about was actually how COVID changed the landscape. And now with the plans that Marie has been talking about, Adli and Tariq, how do you see COVID changing the investment space? And is it gonna be like incorporating different, kind of strategies in the upcoming plans, open to more kind of ups, like risks, and so on? So, what's your take on that?
Sure. It was cutting up a bit on my end, so I hope I caught all of your question. But so with regards to COVID, definitely, one of the silver linings was the extent to which we all got comfortable having panels, pitch sessions, demo days, etc. online, right? And what we found was when that transition happened to first of all, in terms of our angel network, there was a surge in membership, not only from, let's say, the Egyptian diaspora, and I know that much of the funding in African startups comes from the African diaspora. So that's one thing, that definitely. And by the way, whether it's diaspora or other nationalities that may have studied or lived in these localities and feel connected at some point. But the point is, this gave people access that didn't necessarily exist there. One of the things, Tariq is really trying to push forth with Med Angels in terms of the kind of cross-border transactions and the syndications. That is absolutely made a lot more possible because, we are more comfortable doing that. And of course, as investors from abroad start to, that led to more people kind of allocating capital, and capital when I say that, I mean both financially and intellectually, by the way. So they obviously not only make, investments, but also we see that in terms of mentoring and advising startups. The other thing, which once again is extremely obvious, was, what everyone regularly refers to as the acceleration in digitalization, right? And that once again really increases sort of the base or market size that everybody keeps talking about. In the same way that the Egyptian revolution in 2011 that is associated with so-called Arab Spring brought a lot of people onto social media that weren't there before, and that had an impact on internet penetration. But COVID really accelerated the extent to which people rely on technology for day-to-day chores, right? And their willingness to transact online, which, by the way, was a tremendous hurdle before. And I'm sure many of us on the panel, as kind of comfortable we, kind of believe we are with technology, some of us probably had that, am I really going to make a credit card payment at some point? We were all there. And by the way, what's interesting is that this has happened even amongst people that for much of all other parts of their life, everything is very manual in nature, right? But when it comes to doing transactions or kind of day-to-day chores, and I think that really, once again, had an impact. And by the way, if you think about it, reflects on the top funded sectors, right? Transportation, e-commerce, fintech, right? So, and it does bode well kind of for the discussion of inclusion, right? Because we know a lot of people out there, they have phones, they have smartphones, and they're online, but they are excluded from so much of the modern infrastructure. That is the case in Egypt, and of course kind of reflected throughout Africa. So once again, that's how you access those that you're looking to include.
Thanks, Mariam. Adli, you were discussing like the new sectors and uprising of entrepreneurs. Also, Marie discussing how they're growing their plans and reaching out to the region. Can you tell us a little bit about the African reach that we are trying to establish, and are the programs that are upcoming open for Africa to join in? Is the Egyptian ecosystem ready for these startups to join in and get a kind of flavor of what we're doing here and the opportunities that we are opening?
Okay. Thank you, Mary. Actually, I'm so excited to share the same vision. When we started off 3 years back, we were talking about Africa. Since we have Gemini Africa, we had a very clear vision that Africa is the future. And nowadays, I see everyone in the ecosystem worldwide even is talking about the opportunities in Africa, and we share, of course, the same direction. And we believe that Africa is the future. Having said that, actually, I have wrapped up before the panel a meeting with two Nigerian investors, and I'm so glad to see how. They are excited about the collaboration between Nigeria being one of the top countries in entrepreneurship and in filmmaking, of course, African countries, and how they are so excited to deal, to collaborate, to invest in Egyptian startups. And the good news is that they have already started some discussion for some tickets in some Egyptian startups. So the good news is that it's mutual, that we in the Egyptian ecosystem, we are excited to work with the different African countries. And the other side, they believe that this kind of collaboration will create an edge, an added value to both sides. So it's very important to emphasize on this direction, and I would say, to set the grounding rules for such collaboration. We want to create success stories by joining forces. Having said that, and back to your question, we at Gemini in Africa, we're gonna, or actually we signed an agreement with African Development Bank to launch a business incubator for performing arts, and we are gonna launch another business incubator for the cinema tech So we are creating kind of an ecosystem around the new track Cinematech, since we acquired the intellectual property rights worldwide. So we are trying to play the role of the bridge between the African countries and the outside world to expose and to offer opportunities to the startups and entrepreneurs working in the creative industry, performing and performing arts and cinematic, of course. And we believe that we cannot reach this objective unless we have the tools and we avail the resources. One of the main resources is the creation of incubators and accelerator tailored for the need of the creative industry and cinema tech. That's why we are focusing on the collaboration with African fellows. And of course, we share the same vision with my colleagues and friends on the panel that there is a gap, and we need to fill this gap together and to work with this huge opportunity.
Thanks, Adi. It has been a very, very informative panel. If any of my panelists would like to add a word before we wrap up our session. Got it?
It's a little bit cutting off, Mary. I didn't hear you. Can you say again, please?
Yeah. So we're wrapping up our session, and I would like to give it to everyone to give like kind of a closing statement of a promise of a better tomorrow to everyone who's going to be watching us, and for the future of the Egyptian ecosystem.
Great. Thanks, Mary, again. And just to let everyone know that we're a population of over 100 million people, and around half of that are young people, and a lot of them are trying to work in different areas and trying to start, whether they're small companies, being an SME or a startup in working in innovation. And I think that we have a lot of resources and we have a lot of challenges that can be opportunities. So we're seeing a lot of that. We're trying to help as much as we can to build the capacities of these aspiring entrepreneurs, and of course, with all the other players in the in our ecosystem.
Got it? Is it cutting off? Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Tarek. Marie, if you would give us a closing the panel.
Sure. I think the future is very bright for the Egyptian ecosystem, and also not just for the ecosystem, the entrepreneurship ecosystem, but for the economy at large, because all these successful ventures are employing people, are creating jobs, are creating solutions, are simply making people's lives better. And this means higher productivity and more economic growth. So it's really looking great. So we're very excited about the development that's happened over the past couple of years, and the best is yet to come, inshallah. Thank you.
Thanks, Marie. Mariam?
I would really echo, the views that were said before. Absolutely hopeful as well, and really curious to see kind of what the funding landscape looks like, in the next few years, and hoping to see that trajectory. And once again, I mean, for those that haven't really looked at Egypt before, didn't necessarily incorporate it within the Africa thesis. I know a lot of times it's considered MENA, but not necessarily Africa. It absolutely is one. So many, and I think Marie kind of touched on that, so many similarities in terms of from a macroeconomic story perspective. So, I mean, I think there's definitely a lot of opportunity there from an investment perspective, and a supportive, kind of political environment as well. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mariam. I'd like to thank you all for your presence here with us. And there was a lot of hope and positivity in this panel. And like Adli always says, is a competition. What do we say? So, what supersedes what?
Collaboration. Yeah, collaboration supersedes
Collaboration.
competition.
Yeah, exactly. Collaboration is competition, and we have that very obvious in our panel here with everyone being friends. Thank you so much for your time, and we really enjoyed the panel. Thank you.